Howdy. I have been talking about those abandoned castles in Europe. And probably there are other castles all over the world too, which got abandoned at some point of time. And I think the biggest reason why they have been abandoned back in the days was there wasn't any water anymore. Because I think in order to run a castle, with I don't know how many people there were living. It depends on the size of the castles, but there could be hundreds, hundreds of people living in a castle. I think one thing you have to have within the castle walls is water. Just for a simple reason, if the enemy is coming and you retreat back into your castle and you have all the foods and all the stuff there, weapons and things you need in order to defend yourself, but you don't have water, that's a big problem. You cannot tell the enemy, hey, wait, dudes, we have to go down to the river and get some water because we don't have any water. And the enemy says that, yeah, okay, just you have an hour and then you go back to the castle and the war continues. Probably not. The other thing is about churches. Many of those elderly churches, let's say built hundreds or more years ago, they are built on special places. And I think most often there is water where the church is standing. Churches are built rather sturdy. They have thick walls, big doors, thick doors. They are not easily breakable. So you can retreat yourself into the church. And there might be water as well within the church. And back in the days, it has to be practiced that if there is someone which didn't belong to the church, and he showed up at the church and wanted to be a part of that whatever belief system they were practicing in that church, in order to take the person into your community, you have to perform the certain ritual. You give it a name, and you use the holy water in order to perform the performance. Yeah, probably it's good to have water, because every time someone shows up and wants to be a part of your community, and you don't have water, you cannot perform the ritual. So he won't become a part of your community, which is a bad thing, because as bigger your community is, the more power you have. So, these were just two examples about the water. And now I'm writing about peat. I think an hour ago, I finally figured out how I can finish the paper. Because I came rather far. Now it's just about the last part, last section, which goes into this kind of mythology things. And now I was stuck in that for a very long time. But now I think I figured out how I can finish it. And the paper is about peat, wetlands, fens, moors, and stuff like that. And I have been writing about that. They are, in a way, batteries in nature. They are made of the same things as your alkaline batteries. Like those old school batteries, not the lithium batteries. Alkaline. What you used in your Walkman, if you are old enough to know what a Walkman is. I am old enough. Anyway, it's also about the water in general, how dependent people are on water. Even nowadays, even though they don't really realize it. But the water is the thing. No water, no society. No water, no food. It's rather simple. But anyway, I stumbled across this Science Alert article, and yeah, I started to read, and I stumbled across something very, very interesting. Because for people who don't know, if you watch some, maybe I have to search once, pictures from the Middle Ages, Central Europe, and stuff like that, you can see rivers, and there were really big ships on those rivers. And if you go nowadays to watch the same river, it's just a tenth of what it has been back in the days. And I have been talking about the water itself, about I made videos about those drought stones, hunger stones in the Rhine River, for example, and there have been others in the Danube River and stuff like that. When you see me weep, and people were freaked out that, yeah, now it's going to be dry forever because we can see those stones, and there are warnings from ancient people. And I have been talking also about this that, yeah, there has been droughts in many places in the last 2 or 3 years or something. And people were afraid that, yeah, water, there's no water anymore, too less for everybody. Water use got restricted in many countries in Europe. If you wash your car, you go to jail, basically. So, I've been saying that it will be back. It's like a tsunami. Before the tsunami hits, the ocean or the sea retreats, and then it comes back with force. So we have to probably assume back in the days when people tended or used to build castles all over the place and stuff like that, that the water was much more abundant. There was more water everywhere. Many castles are built on cryptodomes, source domes, also called. It's a water source dome. Yeah, there's like, people know there's water pouring off almost every mountain, you know. If there's a small hill, you probably will find a well somewhere. So back in the days in the Middle Ages, there has been probably much more water pouring out of the mountains all over the place. That's why it was possible to build those castles and maintain them. But anyway, let's have a quick read through to this because I thought that's rather interesting from my perspective on the things. I don't expect you to agree or whatsoever. You can read it up. You can read papers I wrote. Make your own thoughts. Make your own research. Make your own conclusions based on the knowledge you have. Like I did. I just made the most logical conclusions I could come up with based on the facts I found. But anyway, archaeologists discover hidden clues about who really built Europe's Bronze Age mega forts. Yeah, that's interesting. I have been also saying that you can see through the soil what is beneath it many times, riverbeds and stuff like that. When I still maybe hopefully have the time to make this kind of earthquake research videos, you know, pick one earthquake and then just go around and see what you find. Satellite imagery and stuff like that. Once I took contact to the Swiss Archaeological Institute because I found something very intriguing and I know the region, I've been living there. And I thought, is this something like this we see here in the picture? Or is it not? And they were very interested. Within a few hours, I got answers from several people, which was very interesting. And it turned out that they really made a quick research about that. But it turned out it was this kind of fungi circle. I don't know what's the name of. Witch circles, also called. But they were nonetheless rather excited because they said it's a very nice example of this kind of a thing. And they thanked me for finding it. But anyway, It took a bird's eye view for archaeologists to realize prehistoric communities of Central and Eastern Europe were still thriving during the late Bronze Age. That's a big deal because these Carpathian Basin societies were thought to be in a state of fragmentation and collapse at the time. In fact, most of the civilizations that encircled the Mediterranean and its adjacent seas were headed towards disaster, known as the Late Bronze Age collapse. Mars made its approaches to Earth. An international team led by archaeologist Barry Molloy from the University College Dublin, Ireland, started their investigation on the ground, doing surveys, excavation, and geophysical prospection. But it wasn't until they stitched together aerial photographs and satellite images of the South Carpathian Basin in Central Europe, known for its cache of prehistoric forts, that the full picture was revealed. Some of the largest sites we call these megaforts have been known for a few years now, such as the Gradis Doseidos, Gazna Balota, Zandana, or the mind-blowing Kornesti Irakuri, Molloy said. Kornesti Irakuri, the latest Bronze Age fortress in Europe, is enclosed by 33 kilometers of ditches and ramparts, far larger than the citadels and fortifications of other Bronze Age civilizations like the Hittites, Mycenaeans, or Egyptians. In the 16th century BCE, these large central nodes were abandoned, which has led archaeologists to assume the society totally collapsed, foreshadowing the fate of many civilizations in the late Bronze Age. However, Molloy and his team no longer think this was entirely the case for the Carpathian Basin societies, at least not until the 13th century BCE. We won't dive in those pictures too much because otherwise it would get a very long video. Anyway, these massive sites did not stand alone. They were part of a dense network of closely related and codependent communities. At their peak, the people living within this lower Pannonian network of sites must have numbered into tens of thousands. Although these enormous centers of power were in decline in 16 to 1450 BCE, people in the South Pannonian plain were forming their own polities or small political states into a network of monumental settlements and smaller sites, most within about 5 kilometers of each other. Yeah, that's an amazing picture. The aerial image shows one of the lower Pannonian sites labeled as A, low-lying land, B, raised sand plateau, C, enclosure ditch, and D, activity areas. Activity areas. Yeah, maybe there's a golf club or something. Molloy and his team discovered over 100 of these densely spaced settlements in the low-lying region, which appear to have relied on adjacent waterways and wetlands for resources. Adjacent waterways and wetlands for resources. So we have to assume that back in the days when the people were living there was tens of thousands of people. They were also, like us, they needed water, and obviously there has been waterways and wetlands all over the place. So there has been more water than nowadays. Just look at the picture. There is not really water anywhere. Maybe these are all drained. These are all drainage things people were digging in order to make the land more fertile and stuff like that. Back in the days, there has been probably wetlands much, much, much more all over Earth. Yeah, now this I haven't read yet. Yeah, this wetland thing and waterways was the trigger for me to make a video. I haven't had any intention to make any video whatsoever. That might have helped these people postpone some of the climate-related impacts that catalyzed the collapse of other late Bronze Age settlements. Also, by around 1250 BCE, the lack of rain began to take its toll on these wetland-orientated societies. So there has been times back in the days when it was much more wet. And we have probably, maybe, experienced the peak of the drought. Now the water is coming back. By 1200 BCE, virtually all of these sites were abandoned en masse. It is fascinating to discover these new polities and to see how they were related to well-known influential societies, yet sobering to see how they ultimately suffered a similar fate in a wave of crisis that struck this wider region. If you just now relax, sit back, and take a brief moment to think about the time you are living in now. Did you experience waves of crisis recently, in the last 3-4 years? I leave it up to you. These societies challenged many aspects of European prehistory and appear to have been an important center of innovation, politics, and trade during 1500 to 1200 BCE. The researchers describe these communities as mutually dependent and closely interwoven, operating at a near total landscape level with complex social institutions and attendant power structures to manage interaction, cooperation, competition, and violence. We have been able to define an entire settled landscape, complete with maps of the size and layout of sites, even down to the location of people's homes within them. This really gives us an unprecedented view of how these Bronze Age people lived with each other and their many neighbors. This research was published in PLOS ONE. Yeah, maybe I have to take a look at that too. But anyway, water, very important for all people, always. Thanks. Bye.